A nugget of wisdom from Dr. Seuss states that the more that you read, the more things you will know. The more that you learn, the more places you'll go. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Elmer D. Chavez Jr., and I will be the one to discuss the third macro skill in language, which is reading.
Here, we will be tackling about the different approaches to teaching reading, the phonics, look and say, and whole sentence. And also, I will be sharing with you the techniques for reading aloud. And to start, let us know first what is reading. Reading is very important in learning a language. It connects learners with vocabulary, grammar, and cultural understanding in meaningful context. When we say meaningful context, this is where the learners can see how words and ideas used in real life situations. Reading helps learners to learn new words, correct grammars, and understand different cultures. That's how important reading is. While listening is the initial foundation of language acquisition, reading eventually becomes the primary means of sustaining and expanding one's language knowledge. In short, listening builds the base or the foundation, and the reading will be the one to sustain the growth and ensures that the learners will have a continuous development in mastering a language. Reading allows learners to go beyond just spoken conversations by allowing the learners to connect to the books, the stories, and other, in which this helps the learners to deepen their understanding of how language works in various situations. Through reading, the learners will have the chance to pause, reflect, and analyze language at their own pace. Like, for example, if the learners will read the stories and then they pause, they reflect if they read it well, if they understand this story. According to Bato et al. 2021, reading is not a passive skill but an interactive process. When we say interactive, it contains effort that combines both bottom-up decoding and top-down comprehension. Bottom-up decoding means focusing on the smaller parts of language like the letters, the sounds, and the words, while the top-down comprehension, it uses our the prior knowledge, experiences, and context to understand the overall meaning. That is why reading is not passive, but it is interactive in a way that the learners will work with both the text and on their own understanding for them to know the words. Because when we say passive, it means doing something without much effort, thinking, or interaction. Now, let us know what are the approaches to teaching reading. As future educators, we must know these approaches so that we will know what are the ways on how to teach reading in the elementary grades. First one, we have the phonics approach. It emphasizes the systematic relationship between sounds and letters. Learners are taught how each letter or group of letters represents a specific sound. By practicing these sound letter connections, the students can decode unfamiliar words by blending the sounds together. Like, for example, the word cat is broken down into a, a, and t, which learners then blend to form the complete word cat, cat. Phonics strengthens reading skills by enhancing word recognition, spelling, and syllable awareness, allowing learners to tackle unfamiliar words independently. That is according to Odina et al. 2022. It means that phonics strengthens reading skills of the learners because it helps learners make strong connections between letters and sounds. When learners practice phonics, they become more confident in breaking down words into parts, just like what I've said earlier, the word cat. It allows them to read and understand unfamiliar words on their own. Another one, synthetic phonics. This helps beginning readers progress faster than traditional methods. When we say synthetic phonics, the learners or the children are taught to recognize letter sounds and then blend them to form words. That's how the learners will be able to understand, or they will be able to know how to read. Like, for example, we have here a classroom example. A grade 1 teacher introduces the sounds s, a, and t, then guides pupils in blending them to form sat. And in that way, the pupils then create variations like mat, pat, and cat, in which those are, in terms of sounds, they are similar to the word sat. Now let us proceed to this second approach, the look and say approach. This is also known as the whole word method. This approach teaches learners to recognize and memorize words as complete visual units. So in here, instead of breaking them down into individual letters, in just like in the phonics, this focus more on repeatedly seeing and saying the whole word until it becomes familiar to the learners. It doesn't only talks about um, saying the words by breaking it down. We have here an example. The teacher shows a card with the word dog, points to a picture of a dog, and pronounces the word. This means that in look and say, the teacher will show a card which has the word dog and also has a picture of a dog, and in that way the learners will know how to pronounce the word dog, because in that way they can relate through the picture of a dog. Okay. According to Bato et al., the learners taught with this method achieved higher post-test scores compared to pre-test, showing strong gains in understanding and recall. Because of these methods, the repeated exposure to whole words help them easily recognize and remember vocabulary, which led to measurable gains in their reading performance. Like we have here a classroom example. A grade 2 teacher introduces four sight words, for example, the come, look, said, and the during a 30-minute lesson. Pupils play matching games, use the words in simple sentences, and point them out in the short storybooks. So, for example, we have the word look. The learners will then match the picture of, for example, the eyes in the word look. In that way, it is easy for them to identify the word look or read the word look, and then they use the words in simple sentences. For example, I look at them and then point them out in short story books. For example, they they read a short story books about the just like for example about the old man. And in that way, by showing them the picture of an old man and the word old man, it is easy for them to read that word. Okay, before we proceed to the third approach, let us have first a comparative analysis of phonics and look and say. Phonics equips learners with systematic decoding skills, enabling them to tackle unfamiliar words independently. In phonics, as what I've said earlier, it talks about the connections of the letters and the sounds. And then look and say fosters fluency, confidence, and motivation by allowing learners to quickly recognize the whole words by giving the charts, the images together. In that way, together they form a um, complementary system in which the phonics provides the foundation of the learners, while look and say accelerates fluency and comprehension. Now let's proceed to the third approach, the whole sentence approach. This approach focuses on teaching learners full sentences or whole sentences instead of isolated words. The goal here is to encourage pupils to understand meaning right from the start, not just memorize words. By reading sentences, learners see how words work together in context, which helps them connect reading with real communication. Like, for example, instead of learning dog alone, pupils encounter I have a dog. In that way, they will know that a dog is an animal, a dog is a pet. So instead of learning dog alone, they will for example, the teacher will teach them to have a whole sentence instead. No, the I have a dog. And for another example, I love my mom, my mom or my mom. And in that way, they will be able to know the meaning of that word, the mom and the ma'am. Mom or their mother and ma'am as their teacher, which both plays an important role of the learners. Then now let's proceed to the language experience approaches. It is highly centered highly learner-centered rather, in which it uses the child's own experiences and spoken language as the basis for reading. The teachers or the teacher listen to what the child says, write down their sentences, and then uses those exact sentences as reading material. And in that way, the learners can relate to that. Like, for example, if a child says, "This is my house," the teacher records it, or the teacher will write it down on the board, "This is my house." And then the child reads it back, "This is my house." And in that way, it is easy for them to read that. It is because that comes from them. We have here a classroom example. "This is me." Then, "My sister is 9. She is in grade 3. In that way, it is learner centered because this comes from the learners itself. Another one. "This is a postcard from my uncle in Milan." And another examples, like, for example, they will say, "I love mangoes." So that comes from a child that he or she love mangoes. And in that way, he or she will or can relate to that, and it is easy for him or her to read that because it comes from himself or herself. Those are the approaches. Now let's move on to the reading techniques. Example here are the reading aloud and the silent reading. Now let us know first the reading aloud. Reading aloud is useful for developing reading skills, especially in small groups or pairs. This allows teachers to monitor pronunciation and expression while also giving learners immediate feedback. It is because, in a way, that the teacher will read it aloud, and then the after that the learners will read it aloud, and with that the teacher will or can monitor the pronunciation of the learners, and also he or she can give feedback to that if the learners pronounce it well, or does the learner has mistakes. And through reading aloud, the teacher can guide the students on how to read more fluently. Like, for example, a grade 3 class may perform dialogue reading in pairs, improving rhythm and intonation. In through this, the teacher will serve as an observer. He or she will observe how the pairs or the learners perform dialogue reading. And then the teacher will give feedback to it, or the teacher will say that this is the proper intonation, this is the proper pronunciation of the word, and in that way the reading skills of the learners will improve. Okay. On the other hand, we have here the silent reading. Silent reading is a practice that helps learners develop independence and self discipline in reading. Teachers can encourage silent reading through English corners and also in the class libraries and structured book review activities. It encourages them to focus on understanding the text quietly without reading aloud, which in turn builds lifelong reading habits because, like for example, they will it it will help them to love reading stories, the books or the stories from the stories that they may find on the books. This approach gives learners time to enjoy books at their own pace and strengthens comprehension skills. Also, in silent reading, the the teacher could provide feedback. The teacher could give the proper pronunciation, the intonation, and others. Despite the effectiveness of the approaches that I have discussed to you, there are still challenges. Now I will discuss what are those challenges in reading instruction. First one, the large class sizes. This may make the individualized phonics instruction difficult due to the large class sizes because the uh, the teacher may find it difficult to cater the whole class. The next one, we have the time constraints. It can also limit teachers' ability to combine multiple approaches due to the time, especially in the elementary. In grade 1, they are taught for 45 minutes in every subject. For example, you are teaching English and you only have 45 minutes, then it is somehow a problem to you on you how you can teach your learners with the time given to you. The next one, we have here the linguistic diversity. Linguistic diversity in classroom requires flexible methods. As learners from those learn there are learners who already know how to speak English, then it is easy for them. They may find it easy to have the phonics approach because they already know the English language. However, there are those learners who doesn't know how to speak English, who didn't know or who are who are not literate enough on the alphabets. That's why it is hard for them to proceed to the look and say approach. That's why uh, in those learners who doesn't know how to speak English, especially those learners who come from the far-flung areas, then it is hard for them. So the best approach to be used for them is the phonics approach. Since as I have told earlier, that phonics approach is good for the beginning readers, for the beginners. Now, let us proceed to the practical application or the classroom integration and how the teacher can apply these approaches and the techniques in reading in a classroom setting. It is important for us as future educators. First one, the phonics approach. We can apply this through we can create short activities where pupils match letters with sounds and blend them to form words. Like, for example, here, the word cat. Then, next one, the look and say approach. We may show the learners the words and also the pictures. Okay, I will give another example. Like, for example, the word guava, and then you provide the image of a guava fruit, and in that way, it is easy for them to understand the word or to read the word guava. It is stated here, teachers may also use pictures alongside the words to help pupils remember them better. Like, if, for example, if that certain fruit is the favorite of your learners, then it is easy for them to remember that word. Or if you show pictures, then they will be their attentions will be catched. Then, now let's proceed to the whole sentence approach. We can use a whole sentence, a meaningful sentences, like, for example, I love my family. It is very meaningful. It is very important to learners. In that way, we can teach them the right attitude. Teachers can write these on the board, read them aloud with the pupils, and discuss the meaning together. In in that way, they will be able to know how to read the words through whole sentence approach. Now let's proceed to reading aloud. Teachers can model good reading by using proper pronunciation, intonation, and expression. As what is being attached here, the picture rather, shows a teacher and the four learners. The teacher will be the one to read aloud the story, for example, and then the learners will follow. And in that way, they will be able to know how to read. They may work in pairs, groups, or individually. Those are the techniques and approaches in reading and also in teaching reading that we can apply in a classroom setting. In conclusion, there are many approaches to teaching reading, and each offers unique benefits for learners. It just depends on the learners. You may use the phonics approach, you may use the look and say, the language experience approach, and the whole sentence, and also the reading aloud and the silent reading. Those are essential for the development of the reading skills of the learners. It Teaching reading is not just about recognizing words and sentences. It is about creating an experience that is engaging, enjoyable, and meaningful for children. With proper guidance and encouragement, pupils can develop not only the skill of reading, but also they will try to love reading, in which it will support their growth and success throughout their learning journey. And that's all, everyone. Thank you for listening. Here are the references that will serve as your guide if you want to learn more about these approaches and techniques in reading.